Good evening, mi gente. This is Collazo, and you're watching and listening to the Found in Translation Bomba Live crossover edition. This is Collazo. Thank you so much for joining us on the 401st edition of Found in Translation. That makes me sound much older than I actually am. But we got to give you what you want, especially during this campaign season. There's so much going on. And not only do we have to provide you accurate information and at times hold our own community accountable, we have to also celebrate people in our community, particularly in the arts, that are overcoming this hostile climate to really elevate our voices in a way that really shows everything that we are and challenges a lot of ugly history that weighs us down. So later on the show, we're gonna be joined by a great friend to the show, Sulma Arzu-Brown, and the cast of D'Que, an incredible web series that tackles several sensitive topics within the Latinx community. But first, we got to break down what's going on with the news this week, and who better than the founder and executive co-founder of the radio version of the program and a fantastic leader in her own right, Vanessa Graber. Guess who's back again?
Hola,
tell a friend. What's going on, Vanessa?
Hey, glad to be there. Saludos to our live audience on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as our podcast audience on iTunes, Spotify, all the digital platforms. The show is everywhere. And of course, a very special shout out to all of our radio listeners on WPPM, that stands for People Powered Media, on 106.5 FM in Philly, and in Camden, People Powered Media. I'm so thrilled that the show has expanded to all the platforms. You've had all these great guests, all these amazing topics. So I'm happy to be.
You're just happy that I keep giving love to our freestyle heads like Richie Rich and Betty D. I know you're enjoying the freestyle content. I'll tell you that Richie Rich has quite a following, that guy. I mean, they are.
You have quite the network. You bring smart Latinos on here. I always say it. People with lots of different points of views, showcasing our diversity. So I'm here to give my, radical 2 cents as well.
Oh, yes. No question. And part of the reason Vanessa's not on more because he's out here doing the work. And we're going to talk a little bit about that again later on the show. We're going to meet with the cast. We're going to have a great conversation with the cast of D'Que, new web series, which is the brainchild of a great friend to the show, Sulma Arzu-Brown. Much respect to our Hondureños out there, our Catrachos. So we always got to represent for all diversity in our community, especially our Central American family. And also later in the show, a little bit, me and Vanessa are going to have to do a little spanking, do a little accountability, because we have a few people in our community doing this right. And we got to be straight up about it, and we got to hold ourselves accountable because, letting things go and being nice is only going to cause our community more harm. And so that's why we have to hold our folks accountable, even people that sometimes we like and it's uncomfortable to call out. We got to do the right thing. But first of all, before I ask Vanessa, from an electoral perspective, is knee deep in Pennsylvania activism to get out the Latino vote and give people accurate information about this new, somewhat complicated voting process, but it also gives us more options. I wanted to give folks just sort of my general state of the race. So many of us live in fear. And I get these texts from friends, family, a lot of, DMs. Hey, Ray, what's going to happen? Are the polls right? Are they going to steal this? Are we really going to win? I'm so scared. And let me tell you something. I think the polling that we're seeing, and of course, nobody believes that's 100% accurate. But the fact that we're in this position electorally, I think we should all understand that didn't just happen because Trump's a bad person or Biden's a fantastic candidate. It happened because not only the work that's happened this year to engage communities like Vanessa does that oftentimes don't get the preferred candidate they want in these cycles, or rarely do, frankly, but they persist to come on to continue to build the movement. But this is also, and I'm thinking about places like Arizona and even in Florida, we're talking about decades plus activism that's led us to this moment where we can feel like we have a very strong opportunity to win this election. And, can it be stolen? Can this guy pull a Putin? Can Bill Barr? Yeah, all those things are possible, and we have to be prepared for all those contingencies. And I know Vanessa's thinking about all those contingencies and is a great thinker about those kind of community outreach strategies. But at the end of the day, I want people to understand. I don't want people in the next 2.5 weeks of their life living in fear. I want you to live in empowerment, because think about what we've done to get us to this point where this is possible. In the beginning of this calendar year, let's be honest about it. Most people didn't think he wasn't going to get reelected. And that's what all my friends told me. And look, we're on the precipice of the light. that we've been searching for, a great relief of stress, not the panacea, not an ideal situation, but something, a political environment and a democracy we can continue to fight for. So, Vanessa, I want to go to you because your thoughts just sort of generally about the race at this point in race is, because the Senate's also a major part of this. But I just want to get your perspective because with Philly Boricuas and your activism, you're talking to not only Latinos, but people that are traditionally very disenfranchised from the process about the importance of registering to vote. And in Pennsylvania, you still have a few days to do that. It's very important. Registering to vote and sort of maneuvering these voting options, whether it's vote by mail, election day, that sort of hybrid piece with the voting centers. So just wanted to get your thoughts about the race and also your reflections. You're on the street, girl. You're talking to people on the street, in the hood, and you're having these real conversations that most of us, frankly, don't have the courage to have. And you're hearing a lot of good feedback. So tell us what you're hearing in our community about this race at this point.
So the first thing that I want to say is don't just vote, right? Like our get out the vote that we're doing now is one of many tactics that we use to make change. So I'm not in the camp that we're just telling people to vote and that's it. This is part of a wider strategy to engage the community, listen to them, find out what their needs and their issues are, what they're concerned about, what their biggest questions are, and then try to formulate a bigger strategy on how to address those concerns, advocate on their behalf, and involve them in the process of building a movement and making change. So voting is just one element to that. The reality is that people need to get educated. They need to learn certain things. Learning is lifelong, we believe. We're always learning, we're always reading and trying to understand what's going on in our world. The second thing is people need to get active in their communities, right? Like we can't just go to the ballot box and that's it. Like people need to, talk more with their neighbors. They need to volunteer. People need to make personal sacrifices if they wish to see reform and change. And then the last part is like the advocacy and mobilization and organizing element to it, right? Like what we're trying to do is build a base of people that want to fight back. And the truth is that I am scared. I really am. I have fear, just like everybody else. But I use that fear to fuel my activism, right? Like that is the gasoline that makes me go out and do this work because I'm afraid what will happen if we don't win, if we just give up, if we don't fight back. And so that fear is what a lot of people are feeling. And we need to really empathize with people, especially people who are most affected by income inequality, by COVID-19, by lack of health care. So, we're out on the streets in North Philly because one, North Philly is where our people are in Philly, right? Like Puerto Ricans specifically. I mean, there's Latinos everywhere, but the heart of Puerto Rican community is in North Philly. So we've been focusing on the Fair Hill community, Kensington, Juniata, like that area. There's not a lot of us. We're volunteers. And we've also seen that there's been a real neglect of those communities in terms of political engagement. So when we go out there, we've been tabling, we've been doing events, we've been partnering with a lot of people and doing food distribution and park cleanups and all kinds of stuff, giving out masks, giving out hand sanitizer. We're asking people, one, like, how are you doing? Like, how are things?
That's right.
Like what's going on in the neighborhood? And what are your questions? We're here to, again, my background is a journalist. The work that I'm doing now is about trying to get journalists to provide people the information they need to survive.
And Vanessa, what's the biggest issue you're hearing with people in North Philly about issues that they're concerned about outside the election, just things affecting their daily life?
I think everybody is concerned about COVID-19.
Corona is real.
Right. Yeah. People are scared about what's happening with that. And the thing is that there's like two kind of like sets of people, right? There's people that are much harder to engage on a political level because their basic needs aren't being met. Like when they see the food, they want the food and they'll say, what do I have to do for the box of food? I won't say you don't have to do anything, but they're ready to sign up and do whatever.
Yeah.
And we're just like,
they're appreciative too. And they're,
Yeah, but it just shows like the desperation. Like people they don't have enough to eat. That is a big problem. People don't have food in Philadelphia. And I can't speak to other cities, but I'm pretty sure that hunger is a thing that is happening everywhere.
It's huge. You see relatively nice cars at food pantries all over big city America, and food insecurity we don't really talk about it that much in that context, but we have a hunger problem in this country, period, which disproportionately impacts people of color, and COVID-19 has just exacerbated that.
Absolutely. And our people, some of them, they're like really like humilde, right? They come up, they're almost like, say like sebochornan, right? Like they kind of are like, is it okay if I take the food, and and they're always thinking of others. Can I take a box for my neighbor? Can I take a box for my abuela? So that's the number one thing is, it's not the thing that you're complaining about, but it's the thing that we're observing, right? Like people don't have enough food, fresh foods, healthy foods. The second thing is that, people don't have housing. There's a lot of homeless people in North Philly. A lot of people lack access to affordable housing. That is a much wider discussion, because we know a big part of Kensington, for example, is being gentrified. There's all this development there. At the same time, there's a big problem with crime and violence stemming from the drug war. Right, we have open air drug markets happening. And then at the same time, those communities are also being over policed, right? So people who are disengaged from the political process, who are experiencing all of those things, they ask us, what's going to change, from Biden to Trump? Because under Obama, not a whole
fair
lot.
Question.
Right. They say under Obama, not a whole lot changed. Under Trump, not a whole lot changed. So that's the most difficult thing to communicate to people, right? Is, how they're going to see the change in their own neighborhoods. So I don't start with the presidential election because it doesn't really affect people, at least not to them. We start from the very basics. Hey, well, did you know one of the ballot questions in Philly is to end the stop and frisk program? You see this police around right now, they can currently stop you. And they go, oh, yeah, we don't like that. I said, the second question is about creating an office of victim advocacy. The third question is about creating a citizens police advisory union. And the city wants to take out loans, for capital projects, for parks and schools and public transit. And those are the things that people can relate to. And they go like, oh, okay, now I'm listening. Right. And then you say, okay, like there's some candidates running here. Here's what's going on with candidates. So we kind of build up to Trump and Biden. And one of the things I think that's really resonated for people is, that Joe Biden has a pretty detailed plan, in comparison to Trump, for Puerto Rico. And so many of us in the diaspora have family in Puerto Rico that we talk to regularly, and that concerns us. So we'll say, oh, did you know Biden has a plan for Puerto Rico? And they go, oh, no, I didn't know that. I said, and we're nonpartisan. We're not telling people who to vote. But we say, you should research that. You should check it out. Just Google Joe Biden and Puerto Rico plan and read about it. And then that's a thing I think that gets people thinking like, oh, okay. So in doing the voter outreach, like we don't really have any training. We're making it up as we go along. But it's about building relationships with people, having conversations with them, finding out what they need, and, building up to like the reasons why they should participate. We also try to emphasize it doesn't take a lot of time. Your vote is safe. We can help you with the questions if you don't understand them. Just trying to make it easy for people because they're making it really complicated, especially with the mail-in ballots and the confusion around in-person voting. So people's other questions are really wild. I mean, a ton of people have said, can we still vote in person at the polls on election day? And we say like, yeah, you can.
Basic information is the most important weapon you can give people. It's having that information. That's right.
What's cool about being like a grassroots, nonpartisan group is we don't have quotas to fill, right? Like we're not really using anybody's money either. Like we're doing this, a lot of it out of our own.
I know I try to get your money. You don't want it.
I mean, like I said, it's more community engagement work than anything, right? Because we're just able to talk to people. At the end of the day, I don't have to leave with a certain number of registrations, but we might have talked to 100 people, right? So I think that's the main takeaway for me is that we need to talk to people more, right? We need to go out there and listen. I know it's a pandemic. I know people are scared. And I know we're doing this virtually right now as we speak. Like we're not in the studio hanging out like we used to be. But people need to get out of the house and off their computers, and they need to get back into the neighborhoods. We do it safely. We can social distance. We wear masks. We have hand sanitizer. We wash our hands. But you can't do all this organizing on the phone and through text and through social media. Like you have to talk to people person to person.
Absolutely. That's always the best approach. And we're listening and we're talking to Vanessa Graber, activist, journalist in Pennsylvania, really the two-state area, particularly in South Jersey as well. So the cannabis legalization is on the ballot in New Jersey. Right. I know that's got a lot of our friends, a lot of our folks. I have a good, we've talked about it, but a Latino couple that is, trying to position themselves for a license if this goes through. So respect to them, cross our fingers. But what I did want to ask you before we go to our next break, Vanessa, is I guess if there's one thing, and then Tony, I'll get to your point, which was excellent in the comment section, but if there's one thing, and I have in the scroll for more information, votespa.com, that you want people to understand about the voting process in early vote, the voting centers. The voting centers can be very convenient options. So anything that you want to share with people quickly about, information and what you want to share about the voting process in PA this year?
Okay. I do it real quick, real simple. October 19th is the last day to register to vote. You can still register to vote. If you've changed your address recently, you have to register again, right? You got to do the whole change of address thing. You have to have an ID to vote, to register if you're a new registration. And when you go to the polls on election day, you have to bring that new ID. If you've been voting for a long time and you haven't changed your address or anything, you don't need a voter ID. But if you're someone who just turned 18 or you're just voting for the first time, you're a new registration, you need that ID at the polls. So you can look for your polling locations at philadelphiavotes.com. All right. You can search polling locations and Philadelphia, PA online. It'll come right up. So make sure you know where your polling location is. Make sure you have confirmation of your voter registration and make sure you bring that ID. For mail-in ballots, I believe the last day for mail-in ballots is like October
27th.
Yes. So with the mail-in ballots, couple of things, right? It does take a minute. So the earlier you do it, the better off you'll be in getting that ballot on time. So do it now. Go to votespa.com, fill out the ballot application. If you're a new voter and you also want to get a mail-in ballot, your best bet is to go to one of the early voting centers. And you can go to one. The one in North Philly that was bumping today, I went by. It was at 4th and Lehigh, Burgos Elementary School.
And by the way, they're open every day. They're open Saturdays, they're open Sundays.
That's right.
That might be your best option. Get your butts down there after compra on a Saturday. And, you don't
register there.
Very convenient.
You can register. You can apply for the mail-in ballot, and they'll give you the mail-in ballot. So you can do all of it at once, and then you could drop off that mail-in ballot there. A lot of people have asked us about the Postal Service because they've heard the stories. They're concerned. So we tell people, if you don't want to send it through the mail, that's fine. Take it to one of the early voting centers, and you could drop it off directly. So I went there with my partner. He dropped it off, and he put it right in the thing. So we know that they got it. They check it for you. And then lastly, super important, and this is if you're in New Jersey or Pennsylvania, you have to put your mail-in ballot in 2 envelopes. There's an official ballot envelope that makes your ballot secret, and then you put it in the envelope that has the address and the postage on it. If it's not in both envelopes, they will not count it. So double, triple check that you've completed everything. A lot of people don't fill out the ballot questions. Flip it on the other side. Make sure you fill out those ballot questions. Go to 70.org in Philly if you have questions about the ballot questions, or Ballotpedia. Those are both good places to read what they actually mean. Crowdsource it. That's what I did. I didn't understand number 2.
There's a lot of good information out there, a lot of nonpartisan information between Votes BA, the Philadelphia website. If you live in Northeast Philadelphia, George Washington High School, a lot of our Latino and minority friends live in the Northeast. They're voting at GW. A lot of people are voting at Temple. We have a lot of friends that work at Temple, go to Temple, live in that area, work at the gas station down the block. A cousin of mine was like, "Hey, Ralph, I really can vote at Temple." He's an IT guy at Temple. He's like, I could really vote. He lives a block away from. He works right down the block from the Leah Center. He works at Temple University. He didn't know, so he was like, "Oh, that's a great tip." So don't assume people know things.
2 quick things because they're also important. If your ballot arrives kind of late and you're like afraid that you're not going to get it in time, you can take it to the polls and they will invalidate it and they will let you vote in person. So if you get it too late and you don't feel like you can send it in, you could take it to the polls with you, or again, take it to the early voting center. Because again, if you feel like you don't trust the mail, it's not going to get there in time, drop it off at one of the official drop-off sites. And then secondly, there's another question we get all the time, especially the older people. If you throw away your ballot, you lose it, you damage it, your dog eats it, your kid takes it, you can apply for a second mail-in ballot. That's so right. Again, you could do that at the early voting center. Hold on, just hit us up at Philly Boricuas too, or in the comments if you have questions, and we'll try to help you out.
And by the way, I just got us, Vanessa, 200 backpacks for the kids for the 24th. So that's another conversation. So we're working
at Hunting Park tomorrow, Saturday, October 17th, from 11 to 3, doing the voter outreach. So come on by and get registered, get the information, and come hang out.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do here is because my man Jesus always brings up these good points about financial empowerment. Ray, what about building access, growing wealth, credit, etc.? One of the things we need to do, Tony, is before the end of the year is really do a deep dive on housing and some of that topic, because the bulk of wealth building in minority communities, frankly, is through housing. And Vanessa spoke to it, that we're having a housing crisis in minority communities through gentrification, through just the rent's too high kind of dynamic all over the country. Many of our communities still haven't recovered from the economic decline of 2009 and 2008, which really was devastating. The most devastating element of that was Black and Latino wealth through housing. So that's a topic that we need to talk about more, Tony. So I'm glad you brought that to the table. And of course, the executive producer of Bomba Live, please go vote. Christina's begging y'all. She is begging y'all. So what we're going to do, Vanessa, is real quick is before we bring on our very special guest, can you catch people up about the shameful, yet another chapter in Puerto Rican media history where La Comay has stuck their foot again, to the point where our legendary celebrities are calling on major media networks to stop playing their music?
Que scandalo, right? Here we go again with La Comay. We thought we got rid of them a few years ago after all their racist and homophobic nonsense. There was a huge public outcry. They got kicked off the air, but they came back. They came on the SBS, the Spanish Broadcasting Service, with a new show. But they're back to the same old antics. This time, Cobo was basically making fun of one of the gubernatorial candidates' children. There was a photo that was uploaded, and he sexualized the photo, especially of Lugaro, who is the candidate's daughter.
And the only female gubernatorial candidate.
Who's an independent candidate. And, there's levels to this stuff, right? Because it's just misogyny, it's like pedophilia, it's like all types of,
it's just so disgusting,
wildly inappropriate stuff. And the thing that is like beneath the surface is that in Puerto Rico, there's been a series of murders of trans women and women, and there's been a international outcry from women in Latin America about femicides, right? About domestic violence, about the abuse that women are experiencing under patriarchal societies, and just the machismo, right, that affects us all. So the fact that this is a woman gubernatorial candidate and they, singled her out and did this to her children, the children are innocent here, no matter what, right? So
the child wasn't doing anything wrong. It's just a kid
running
around playing.
It's perverse. It's disgusting. And so that is why people are protesting. They're calling for a cancellation of the show. Bad Bunny is threatening to take his music off the stations. And
Bad Bunny shouted this issue out on the Latin Billboard Awards last night and dedicated his honor as the top Latino artist to Latinas and, of course, women dealing with these issues all over the world, but particularly Puerto Rican women, transgender women on the island of Puerto Rico dealing with this. So this caused international headlines. And I want to remind people that we got rid of La Comay many years ago, particularly with this, just misogyny, but particularly the LGBT
the homophobic and content. It's just, they're always doing something. It's not, the thing that makes me upset, it doesn't represent us, right? This is not who we are as a people. There are some people in every society, right, that are gross and inappropriate and racist and horrible, but that's not representative of us. And this is why we do the work we do with media and with journalism and getting control of our own media. Like, look what happened when we started a station, right? We changed the content. We didn't have none of that inappropriate mess. We didn't tolerate racism or any of that stuff. And we need to hold these media companies accountable for the impact that their content has on our communities. And so Cobo needs to go, La Comay, they need to cancel all that stuff. And they need
immediately
to do an apology. And they also need to repair the damage that's been done.
Absolutely.
There's a real distrust of the media, especially in the United States, but in Puerto Rico as well. I mean, we saw how the media was kind of in cahoots with Governor Rosselló, right? They were defending him. They were not really supporting the protests. They were not really doing a lot to call out the transphobia and homophobia and the violent acts. So they need to do better. They need to be held accountable, and people need to keep fighting. We know what happens when Boricuas get out on the streets, right?
That's
so
right.
This ain't going to end here.
Especially the women that were in the LGBT community really fomented these movements over the last several years on the island, were really the leaders, essentially, in many ways, of the Ricky Renuncia movement and the subsequent movement to, we'll see. We have three major new party candidates that, whatever you want to think about them, are pretty strong. They're going to get a lot of support in this election in November in Puerto Rico. And a lot of that is based off not only pushing back on the corruption, but based off both major parties on the island not doing enough to support women in the LGBT community. And you're listening to Vanessa Graber on Founding Her and Jason Bomba Live. Before we get to Sulma Arzu-Brown and her team that have a great new web series we want to learn more about, D'Que, I want to call out the other person that's on the crawl here. So for people that don't know, Reverend Samuel Rodriguez is actually a Bethlehem Boricua. He's a Puerto Rican from Pennsylvania, born and raised, I don't know about born, but raised in Lehigh Valley. And for people that don't know, Reverend Rodriguez is probably one of the most prominent 2 or 3 Latino evangelical pastors in the United States. He has a mega church in California and is very well recognized in the evangelical community. And so Reverend Rodriguez, for whatever reason, and he, and for full disclosure, I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm sure he does a lot of good spiritual work for people, but for whatever reason, really has tied has really been jockeying President Trump since he won. And so the first thing to raise my eyebrow about Reverend Rodriguez was after, if you recall, Vanessa, when AOC and that congressional delegation, particularly of women members of Congress, went to the border to observe the conditions, and they reported some horrific findings. Remember, they met women that were drinking out of toilets and just abusive, concentration camp type situation. Trump called him, and he proceeded to go down days later and took pictures and prayed, not with the children, not with the refugees that were being abused by the authority figures, but sat and took pictures and prayed with these scum ICE guys that go to work every day. And look, you can make your own decisions, but you go to work every day to torture children and torture people. And so, now we turn around and we all see on social media the last few days that Reverend Rodriguez is going to be bringing Eric Trump to the middle of North Philadelphia, right in the center of the neighborhood that Vanessa does a lot of her great community work. And we just had to call it out. Because, look, I'm sure he's a nice guy. I know he literally has blood relatives in Philly that are pastors that we're all friends with, and it's all nice. But this is the bottom line. When you don't call out your nice people, look at Amy Coney Barrett, who's going to be on the Supreme Court. She's got 7 kids. I'm sure she's nice. But that nice lady is going to vote in that in the next ACA Supreme Court case to cut 20 million people off their health care. So that nice lady, so all y'all out there, my cancer warriors, my friends that have pre-existing conditions, that nice lady you see on TV and your friends are telling you, oh, she's Catholic, oh, she's nice. She has, look, she has 2 black kids. That nice person is going to cut 20 million people off their health care at least. That nice person is there on a mission to turn around. I have a brain fart, Vanessa, the abortion.
Roe versus Wade.
Roe versus Wade. I'm so sorry. That nice person, and I know that's a controversial issue in our community, but the bottom line is that if and when however the turn, the only people going to jail are young black and brown women. And so that nice person is going to put y'all families in a position years from now where you're going to have to be doing GoFundMes for your daughters, because they'll be getting put in prison for having to make a very difficult decision in that atmosphere. So that these nice people like Reverend Rodriguez, like Amy Coney Barrett, they might be nice. They might be Christians, but they're doing harm at this moment to our community, and we have to call it out.
Absolutely. I mean, I went to 12 years of Catholic school. And my main takeaway, right, was like, speak out against injustice, help the sick and the poor, and treat everybody with love and respect. So if you use those 3 basic principles, right?
Funny how that works, Vanessa, huh?
The Trumps don't meet the test. And we talk about courts and these cases, they have lots of tests, right? The criteria you have to meet if it's going to do X, Y, and Z. And so that's my test, right? So, Philly Boricuas is organizing a protest against Eric Trump, coming into North Philly to one of the ministries. And listen, this is not a
There protest. It is, Vanessa. There it is. Right. Everyone can join you.
So this is not a protest against the church or against Christians. I just want to clarify that.
Oh, of course.
We are protesting Eric Trump and the policies and the values that they represent. And the reality is that Trump kicked off his campaign with racism against Latinos, and he has continued a policy after policy of hate, oppression, poverty. I mean, like, I just
heard about his own wife, his own son. They got COVID. He wasn't worried about it.
I mean, my question for them, right, is just this simple, right? Because this is the most horrific thing that I can think of, is how do you justify the Latino children in cages being treated like animals right now? It's happening right now.
Women getting hysterectomies unwarranted.
Yeah, children getting sexually abused, living on the floor like animals. I mean, my dog is getting better treatment.
And
than
for what?
children.
I mean, for what? Like, so you can curry favor with these people? It's disgusting. Vanessa, we got to get to our next guest. We'll talk about it at the end of the show. I know we're both heated, and we definitely want to support you with tomorrow's counter protest. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a clip from a recent performance from a tremendous entertainer, Maria Isa, who's also a tremendous advocate for all these issues, who did a Bomba in homage to our personal friend, George Floyd. And then we're going to be Sulma and the crew to talk about D'Que, the new hot web series that we all have to support.
Fuego, que fuego. Si no pone la gente se va a quemar. Que si no pone la gente se va a quemar. Fuego, fuego, Minnesota. Fuego, fuego, Minneapolis. Fuego, fuego para Jorge. Fuego, fuego para los nombres que han matado la policía. Que se largan ya. Que yo no quiero sufrir. Mi gente negra no quieren más, no quieren no sufrir. Que todos tenemos que vivir con unidad y no van a sufrir. Ay, cómo duele, 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 cómo duele. Mataron a George como Pilando, como Brianna. Mataron a George como Pilanda, como Llama.
What a talented woman. Speaking of talented women, let's get great friend to the show on the scene here. Talk about D'Que, our latest project. Sulma, welcome to Found in Translation. Unmute yourself, my friend.
Hello.
Sulma, how are you?
Thanks, brother from another mother. How are you?
So great to see you. So great to see you. Let's get right into it, Sulma. I want you to, in a moment, I want you to introduce your cast of this great web series. Why don't you tell us about your latest project, D'Que, which is a spin-off or the next iteration of your seminal children's book, No Hay Pelo Malo.
Yeah. So D'Que Latino is definitely the video adaptation of Pelo Malo No Existe, Bad Hair Does Not Exist. It's actually a contemporary story of a beautiful, successful Afro-Latino upper middle class family living and raising their kids in the South Bronx. Oftentimes our communities don't get depicted in the proper light, and we wanted to show something different. This is I guess a cross between the Huxtables that did something very, very historic for the African American community back in the 80s, and Blackish, right? And the difference between our show and Blackish is that this upper middle class family does not believe in brain drain, so they're not leaving their community, and they choose to make sure that their children are well rooted and that they can be successful and still be a part of the beautiful culture that exists. And D'Que Latino, which means supposedly Latino because they are Afro-Latinos, right, was birthed, really created during COVID at the height of the COVID pandemic. So all of our incredible cast members were literally quarantined in their home when this happened. I prayed. I'm like, God, what do you want me to do with this time? How do you want me to serve you and still serve the world in the process? And my spirit person spoke to me that script you and L. Blake's partners created it back in January of 2019, bring to life. Call everybody. And that everybody, my first call was actually Rhina Valentin, who is an actor here. Rhina Valentin is the founder and creative director of La Reina del Barrio, and she is a New York born Puerto Rican descent. After that, I called Marilyn, and Marilyn hooked me up with Julia. That we have Julia Linares, Caras-Linares. She is an executive producer, actress, stager, interior designer, and Julia is also the CEO of Freedom Studios, a woman-owned media company, right? Predominantly Latina, woman-owned media company. And Julia was like, I got Jenny Amigo for you, which is the protagonist, the main character. I'm like, who's that? Marilyn Camacho, right? So we have Marilyn Camacho, who plays Jenny Amigo. Marilyn is a Puerto Rican actress born and raised on the south side of Chicago, Illinois.
Chi-town in the house.
Yeah.
She actually grew up on the Mexican side. Very interesting.
I did. Grow half my life, actually.
There you go.
It happens. It's a beautiful city.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Julia, I forgot to mention, is also an Hondureña like myself. So
Catracho's in the building.
That's right.
Very nice. So Sulma, why don't you, for people that aren't familiar with your book series, tell us a little bit about that, and then what led to developing this web series? Because what's so interesting about it is you not only created a television pilot, but you did it during COVID-19. So a very unique journey to create this series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the book was written because, a babysitter actually used the colloquial term pelo malo to describe my daughter's curly afro hair and asked me to chemically straighten it because it was bad hair. I responded with, hay pelo largo, corto, colocho, ondulado, afro, all different types of terminology so that we don't have to resort to negative terms for my child or any other child under her care, right? So the book was beautifully presented and illustrated by my good friend Isidra Savio. She did all of the illustrations. So D'Que Latino was born out of all the stories. You'll see Rhina Valentin, who plays the Cecil. She starts off by combing one of the little girl's hair, Anita, and she's like, and she's saying, pelo malo, pelo malo. That's the story, right? Because the babysitter who labeled my daughter's hair as bad, she loved my family. It was a colloquial term. I know that I'm a very responsible mom. I'm not going to just leave my child with just anybody, but it opened up such a beautiful conversation. And she said, my father was an Afro-Latino from Puerto Rico, but all he called his hair was pelo malo. He had no idea that his daughter would be responsible for hundreds of kids, Afro-Latinos, Latinos, in the future. right? So because I responded from a place of love, you get this beautiful character, Jenny Amigo, played by Marilyn Camacho, right? And as a beautiful and as a woman that is always out there in business, through the New York City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, I came across a lot of women who said that they had issues going to work with their natural curls. They didn't know whether or not they were going to get accepted. In came the story of Genlo Advertising. Julia plays Lola Fuentes, and she's Marilyn or Jenny Amigo's business partner, right? You'll see in the video stories how Julia wants to adhere to the societal norm of beauty, right? But then Jenny decided that she was going to confront this head on because her child was pretty much being bullied, right? So she had to own her Afro-Latinidad and Afro-descendiente in order to be the example that she wanted to see. So all my stories and all the stories that I've heard became D'Que Latino.
This is a question for any of you. Like, given that Latino media and even Spanish-speaking media in the U.S. Often is not very diverse, right? It's not very inclusive of Afro-Latinos, of indigenous people, of LGBT peoples, and women especially are very sexualized. How did you want to use the show to change those narratives and to also just show a different side of Latinas? And I love that we're in this conversation. We all look different. We're showcasing the variety. But what did you want to change, in terms of like the narratives and the types of people that they're used to seeing in the mainstream media?
Yeah, I think it's about, and I'm going to give this back to Rhina too, but I think it's about owning the beauty of our culture. Like as a Garifuna woman from Honduras, we are a matriarchal culture, right? And a lot of the conversations start at home from the family table. We always have an auntie in the room. So we just wanted to show, not the fetish of the board of directors of the marketing, of media, but we wanted to show what the Latinos really look like and how we engage. And that's why, Tia Ceci was introduced, because she brings that homely, and I'm not going to talk, but she brings the love, and we trust Tia Ceci, right, to be also the foundation of that culture and that warmth of the family. And Rhina, you can speak to Tia Ceci.
So first, let me just begin by saying my hair is naturally curly. This is just fall season hair, right? And this is the way I wore my hair for the show. And with regards to what you were referencing, I was able to recall back to my childhood when I would have my hair combed and how torturous it was and how I would cry. So it was something I was familiar with. The language of pelo malo was also something I was familiar with. And it's something that I don't really think it's said in to be facetious, but it's just said so as a matter of fact that I think it's time for us to have the conversation of what's really underlying in that form of communication. And the fact that we even embrace it and we're okay with it. Mm-hmm. Right? And so my character, although she is supposed to be from, I don't necessarily know if she's from Honduras or we're not, but she's definitely not from the States. And so her job, or rather my job in crafting her, my intent was to keep it authentic, but also be loving in the sense that it's innocent, because I also think that's part of the conversation, that it isn't done, like I said, facetiously. It's just something that we all grew up in communicating, amongst each other. And so I think it's just time to stop communicating that way and embracing that way of identifying ourselves.
Yeah. The goal was never sexy. The goal was what's in the heart, what are the family values, and how to make it light. I think Julia's going to come, but I love what the word Julia used. Like it was escapist. It's like escapism, right? Yeah, and it's such a beautiful word that you want to be a part of the Amigos family, right? And Marilyn brought, all that mommypreneurs are, a beautiful, loving wife, supportive to her husband. She was very careful on what husband she chose because she knew that it had to be a partnership. And it's something that is the foundation of our culture. And I think D'Que Latino did an excellent job of bringing us back to the foundation. And Marilyn can speak to that as well. Yeah.
Yes. I think just the whole family dynamic, for me, it was an honor to be able to bring that to life. It's not something that you see often. You know, as you had mentioned in the past, recently, Sulma, it's like we all, growing up as a kid, I watched the Cosby Show. Like that was the family that we grew up watching, right? Like Family Matters and the Cosby Show and those, so it was interesting for me to be able to bring life to a culture, that we don't always see represented properly on television and authentically, and also give perspective to the Afro-Latino experience, the Afro-Descendiente experience, and then all of the stigmas that we have to deal with within our own culture, starting with our hair, and that's a big thing, I think, for a lot of young girls. I know that I dealt with it a lot when I was a young girl as well, having like the curliest hair out of all of my sisters. So for me, I immediately related to it. And it was just wonderful to see a dynamic where the husband and the wife would get along really well. We're doing our best to try to raise our kids as best as we possibly can, and just be a really good, solid representation of a Latino family. So for me, it was an honor. I feel so blessed to have been a part of it.
One of the things I love is that it just represents like women power, right? Like how women are often the heart and souls of our families, that we're strong. And we're not always represented that way in media. So I love that there's all these like really interesting, funny, smart characters, and that it shows many different kinds of Latinas as well. Yeah. What are you looking forward to now that you have, done a season and you've explored some themes? Like, where are the areas where you're like, okay, this is where we need to go next? Or what type of inspiration have you gotten since doing the show?
It's interesting. This is actually the pilot episode. It is a 13-part episode series. We were just able to create the pilot episode. And I do also want to mention that we had incredible young talent there. We had Alyssa Sheeta, who's now the voice of Nick Jr., Santiago of the Sea. She plays the Black Little Singing Mermaid. We have Jesus del Orden. He played young Simba in Broadway's The Lion King. We also had Anita. Oh my God, it's not Crystal Rose. Crystal Rose did the original score, but she's a brand new actress. She's brilliant. We have Victor Cruz. I mean, the cast is amazing. I think one of the areas that I know we're going to be developing is going to be the Lola Fuentes and Jenny Amigo, Genlo Advertising, right? Because you get two Latinas, right? One of them believes that she didn't have to change who she was in order to be successful, while her best friend all along had been having challenges with who she was, and she did believe she had to be different in order to be successful. And Julia, who plays Lola Fuentes, Jenny's best friend, can speak to that as well. How we'll
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you for having us. I think that these conversations are very important. I think that many of us can relate to it. How many times, have we not been in a space where we've been told we are too Latina, that we have to be not outspoken? And for me, this was an opportunity to tackle those stereotypes and really create our dialogue and be able to have those conversations. And so when Sulma called me, I'm like, yes, this is what my career has been about, is really creating content that is authentic to our community. And most importantly, having us, our own people creating our content, because we often see that, right? That there's this whole conversation as to why our content, our shows don't make it, why they're not successful, because a lot of times it's not authentic because it's not us creating it, right? And so it's often very whitewashed. And I think that this is what is so beautiful about this particular project, is that we are not only the faces in front of the camera, but also the faces
behind it and making these stories, sharing many of these stories are our own experiences, right? And so for me, it was incredibly a special project to be working with four amazing women who I respect, I love, because Marilyn is not here, but she is my partner at Freedom Studios, and we're continue to create content. And Marilyn and Rhina, I mean, we've been talking about collaborating, and then Sulma came in and she was like, okay, guys, ladies, here it is. Here's the project. And we jumped right on. And we are so excited. We can't wait to tackle more of those stories that many of our community are going to be able to relate to.
Right. Wonderful. And you're watching, and we're having a great conversation here with my co-host Vanessa Graber and Sulma Arzu-Brown in the cast of D'Que. I mean, a project which I think is really going to be seminal. I was telling Sulma the other day, I said, I see this Netflix in your future, my friend. So you need to, speak that into existence. There's a lot of opportunities for this kind of content. You're really dealing with a very seasoned cast of actors. Sulma, talk about the challenge of doing this on Zooms. I mean, it's one thing to have conversations, but talk about that process when you sort of not only recruited the actors and the cast to be a part of it, and then you were like, hey, by the way, we're going to do this, a pandemic style.
Yeah. We were just, I had never heard of Zoom until like 2 weeks before God gave me this project. I'm like, okay, we're just gonna have to make it work. We all became like mechanics. We had to learn the filters. We had to know who needs to turn on their camera to be. It was like we all became, I think, producers. It's not written, but we all had to pretty much, set our background, and it all just fit in seamlessly. I think it's because I think we were doing it out of love, right? And I also want to just highlight this. One of the other conversations, going back to Vanessa's question about what other things we're going to talk about, colorism. Colorism is real. When I had in my mind who the protagonist needed to be, who the mom, the Jenny Amigo, I had a woman with my complexion or darker skin with thick curly hair so she could reflect, what we believe is an Afro-Latina, right? We had casted a couple of people and it didn't work out. Then Julia says, oh my God, my friend Marilyn is perfect. She's, she's there, she has the time. And I was like, God, whatever you say is cool. I got Marilyn's picture and I'm like, God, you gotta be kidding me. This is how I want it, right? And it's interesting, Marilyn and I, she could attest to, we had a beautiful exchange of conversation that there have been people, in her life that told her she should not identify as an Afro-Latina because she was too light, too fair. And she expressed that her grandparents were, dark Nubian complexion from Puerto Rico. And I was basically like, I'm not going to disrespect your abuelo or your abuela. And today with this, we're going to honor them. And you, my friend, you are Jenny Amigo. I can't tell a sister she's not black enough. Come on, that's DNA. We can't label each other like that. That's how we divide and conquer and separate. So I'm so happy that Marilyn, you blessed this to have some real conversation.
Yeah, very, very talented with the role. Marilyn, just a little bit about this role, because I know it was very complex on a lot of levels.
It was, and I have to be honest with you. When Julia called me, I was like, "Are you sure you want me to play this?" And I'm like, I need to have a talk. I need to have a talk with So we did. It was me, Maylene, Sulma, and Julia. We all got on a call and we talked about it, and I expressed to them, the frustrations that I have had recently, dealing with being in, first and foremost, being in the entertainment community, right? And being here in Hollywood where, all of a sudden within the past couple of years, it's almost as if saying that you're Afro-Latino or Afro-Latina, it's almost become a trend, And I understand the movement. I understand the struggle. I understand the need for visibility for our Black, Latina, and Latino brothers and sisters out there. And I never wanted to take up that space. That wasn't something that I'm like, I don't want to do that because I want to give respect to the fact that they deserve to be out there. They deserve to be highlighted. And so I had a very strong conflict, internal conflict with taking on this role, initially. And then also it came from, just my own experiences with some of my Black Latina sisters who, have confided in me and told me, Marilyn, you can't really claim that because you're not dark skinned, And I'm like, well, what is the term? What is it that I can do to honor my heritage, to honor my ancestors, to honor my grandfather, my grandparents who were Black Latinos, Black Puerto Ricans, and this is a big conversation that's happening in Puerto Rico right now. They're talking about afrodescendencia, con gente con la piel clara. It's people with light skin Latinos like myself, who happen to have all the other features, right? But we don't have the dark skin. And this is a conflict because a lot of them feel like they want to honor that. They want to honor that side of themselves. And I felt the same way. So knowing that there's now a term for this, and it's called afrodescendencia, to say I'm a Puerto Rican Afro-descendant woman, for me, that feels accurate. And it doesn't feel like I'm taking up the space for my Black Puerto Rican, Black Latino, Latina sisters and brothers that are out there. So it was it was a journey. It was definitely a journey taking on this role. But I felt like I really connected with Jenny on so many levels. On the motherly side, coming up in a big family with, there's 8 in my family, brothers and sisters, and the middle child. So I had a good hand in having, raised my younger brothers and sisters. And then also, dealing with the whole hair situation. For me, that was a real thing. When I was a little girl, my hair was it was a problem, from my mom. And I remember all the times I had to cut my hair, and then hating my hair throughout high school and even college, to the point where I chopped it all off, and it wasn't until recently, within the past 4 years, that I've embraced back my curls and went through the process of stopping straightening out my hair, because I straightened out my hair for so many years and damaged it, to now start the process of embracing my curls. So for me, on all other levels, I totally related to Jenny. And
this is in sort of the particularly among emerging Latinas in Hollywood and in the entertainment industry, who are of color, who are somewhere in between, right. Whether it's how Cardi B's looked upon by both the African American and Latino community. There's been controversies over the years because Gina Torres Rodriguez, rather. There is a Gina Torres, but
there is a Gina Torres.
Yeah, but that's not what I was referring to. You're right. Or Jay, like they've used the N-word in rap songs or TikTok or something, and they get called out on it. Or so there's a lot of subtleties here and nuances that we're grappling with, and particularly Latinas on the forefront of the entertainment industry who want to honor our heritage, but also may be careful about not trying to overstep that space, right? So, and then casting. I mean, Zoe Saldana was largely cast as a Black person for most of her career. So there's a lot of interesting nuances there. Zulma, I have the clip teed up. It was a little awkward how I did it, but it's there. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about the clip, and people can see the promo video, and then we'll begin to start wrapping up this wonderful edition of the show.
Yeah, so this is D'Que Latino, the promo clip. Again, it was all shot in the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. It took us 3 weeks to do all of this together, and it was edited by Max Napi. But I feel like we honored our talents, we honored who we are, and I definitely think that we made our ancestors very proud. It's a loving family. The Amigo family is called D'Que Latino. You can follow D'Que Latino on Instagram, but just join us. We're going places with this, and we're doing something quite historic here.
Let's check out the clip.
D'Que Latino premiering on BronxNet TV and Facebook Live this Tuesday.
Esa comida es rica. I can smell it from down the block.
Have you ever thought about how important your natural hair is to you?
Is it true, Mommy? You have good hair and we have bad hair?
You're beautiful. From hair to toe.
Welcome back, my queen.
How will Jenny Amigo let everyone know pelo malo no existe? That hair does not exist.
D'Que Latino premiering on BronxNet TV and Facebook Live this Tuesday, September 15th at 2:30 p.m. and 8 p.m., followed by a live Q&A.
I love it. So innovative. I can't believe y'all did this on Zoom. And I think it just encourages people to take risks, right? If you have an idea, if you feel like nobody's doing this thing, like just do it, right? And, experiment with it. I'm so excited to see this project come to life, and along with the books. And I think Ray's right. I think we're going to see big things from this crew. Somebody's going to pick this up and come knocking on your door. Remember, you were on Bomba Live. Don't forget. We're going to will it into existence, right? Yeah. More series, more media that's more reflective and of our culture, that honors our ancestors and who we are as a people. and just more authentic voices, right? Because so much of the media has like, it's always this like rich people versus poor people, but you don't see a lot of everyday people, especially if you live in New York or Philly, Miami. It's just everyday people interacting with one another on this daily drama. So I love that show captures like our experience. Tell people how they can follow the show and check it out.
Sure, they can follow the show D'Que Latino on Instagram for sure. We are gonna we already started shopping it around. We're getting some good good feedback, interest. So we hope to be able to develop the next of the rest of the 13 episodes. This is the time for everyone to create. Frida Kahlo started her art while she was in her cast, right? And we were all in a cast during COVID, and that's when the best of us came out. This was done out of love to make sure that people understood the beauty and the foundation of our familia Latina. We can be successful. We are beautiful. We can stay in our neighborhoods, and more importantly, we can give back the talent and share the talent that God gave us. So, D'Que Latino, follow us. If you know anybody out there on Netflix, to give me a holla. I want Netflix straight. Don't give me no middle person. Give me Netflix straight up.
That's right. Rhina, Julia, Marilyn, any other final words you want people to know about the show or what y'all are doing?
Well, I think that, again, what I would say is support your Latino community. Unite. I think that there's power in unity. I would encourage any other filmmaker out there to take advantage of the technology that we have in place. Just do it.
Yes, and this is another call for more Latino writers, directors, producers who are calling the shots and making the decisions. Because when we control our own media and our own narrative, we can create beautiful things like D'Que.
That's right. So I just want to close with saying that aside from us making it, it's also making and creating the stories. It's so important for us to support it, because that's where we're falling short. It's like our stories matter, and the way they're going to matter is if we're supporting them. So I encourage people to just support and give us that feedback or whatever it is that is going to allow us to just keep producing and creating. And that, again, just to piggyback off of what Julia said, it comes in numbers. So we need the viewership as well.
The second that, today in Hollywood, there was a group that put out a letter to Hollywood. I don't know if you all seen it, but it's a call to action, and it's a call to Hollywood to stop ignoring Latino and Afro-Latino narratives on television and film, and also opening up the doors and, stop holding that door back from being open to people that are qualified to be showrunners and to be writers on shows, and to be producing the work that you see here. So, and it does ultimately it starts with us. We have to continue to support each other. So I echo everything that all these women are saying. We have to continue to support each other and make sure that we have each other's back when we're trying to do something epic as putting D'Que Latina out on the air. So
absolutely.
And
that speaks to the larger conversation we're having in Hollywood. Look at the activism, Marilyn, around One Day at a Time. And now it's going to be on CBS, but it was in limbo for quite some time. If it wasn't the Latino arts community stepping up and demanding representation, that wasn't going to happen.
I just want to say really quickly, and we're not just talking the talk. We're walking we're really collaborating together. I'm working, with Sulma. We're creating something. I'm creating something with Rhina. Marilyn, we started conversations, and we are, as a producer, with 3 other producers, we're looking at content. We're talking to different producers. So we're here. We want to produce together.
Wonderful.
For sure. We obviously didn't wait for Hollywood or any other quote unquote powers that be. At the end of the day, we're going to make it anyway. Exactly. We're going to create. We know how to make the dollar out of 15 cents. So we're just going to do this.
Keep doing it.
That's the Brooklyn way and the Latino way. To my co-host, Vanessa Graber. Vanessa, we always have a lot of fun on the show, and thank you for bringing the heat, particularly in the beginning of the show, to give us a lot of very important insights and information. You did a great job leading this conversation. Zulma, we're family, and we always support you and your projects 1,000%. And our new friends, Marilyn, Julia, and Rhina. This was a very challenging project, which I know challenged all of you on a personal level as women and women of color, and and really trying to help our community evolve. We think about race, ethnicity, and who we are, so we can empower our children to understand the history, the culture. It's a wonderful thing to be so diverse amongst ourselves, and it's something to honor, not to be ashamed of. So whatever we can do to contribute to that movement, we're here for you 1,000%. To that point, we're going to wrap up the show by hearing a clip from a group of Bombero, a family of Bomba that does Bomba music, Afro-Puerto Rican music on the island of Puerto Rico that are big parts of the Bomba Life family. So we're going to hear from Cultura Activa. And thank you so much, Vanessa. Y'all need to register, vote. Let's get ready. And
get out and vote, support your local artists,
yes,
and love each other.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Sulma and crew, and support D'Que, and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Esperamos que les hayan gustado estas alternativas y no olvides seguirnos en nuestras redes sociales, en Instagram como Cultura Activa PR y en Facebook como GCL Foundation. Recuerda que nosotros somos Cultura Activa PR.